My name's Dorian Porter. I'm CEO of a company called Moses, and I am the moderator today, so it's my job to keep us on track, and I'll do my best to do that, and to prod all of these folks to my left to answer the questions. I also want them to be able to answer your questions, so you can feel free at any time either to put up your hand during the conference or during the session, and I'll try to work that in, or you can text a question to my cell phone, and I'll monitor that from up here. And the last time I did that, I did get about 10 or 11 texts during the panel, which meant I couldn't ask them all, but it was a great way, if you didn't want to disrupt the flow, to prod me into getting into the right area of focus with these folks. So feel free to send it to my mobile number, which is the number below. So just by introduction, I'm going to ask each of these folks to give you a brief overview of who they are and what they do, spending no more than 2 minutes each on kind of what their approach to social networking and mobile social networking, or social networking both on the web and on the mobile phone, and how they are approaching those opportunities. Some of them are more slanted mobilely than others who are more focused on the web. So I think it's a good mix to really dive into social networking. And I think based on a similar panel in August, we didn't get to the monetization component, I think, as much as the audience wanted to, and so we're going to dive into a little bit of that more today as well. So, but again, if you have any thoughts or questions, please ask them. So I'm going to turn it over to each of these gentlemen, starting with my immediate left with Sean Conahan, to give a brief overview of who he is.
So Intercasting Corp definitely skews toward the mobile social networking opportunity. We recognize that there's an opportunity for existing social networking sites to mobilize, as it were, and we know that the network operators want to monetize that experience on the web on their mobile networks. We think the opportunity is to sort of sit in the middle and enable both of these constituencies to bring this mobile experience to consumers. So we have a platform that enables that, sort of optimized for mobile social networking, and our clients are the carriers and the web-based brands. We also have a consumer brand, which is more of a sort of a laboratory, if you will. It's where we sort of learn different things about consumer behavior. That's called Ravel. It's been out for about a year, doing pretty well.
Great, thanks. Next up is Mike Koss, who's head cheerleader for Blue Dot.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. So Blue Dot is a pretty new company. We launched our product in June. And we're a social bookmarking site. You can see a picture up there. The Blue Dot is basically, we're a kind of a pure recommendation service. We allow you to share things that you find most interesting with your friends on the web, or your coworkers, or your family, and do that in a safe environment. So you add a button to your toolbar, and you click that button to share any piece of web content, whether it's a Google video, or a YouTube video, a news article, a book that you want to buy on Amazon, whatever it is in your life that you're finding on the web you want to share, or remember for yourself, or share with your friends. You can do that on Blue Dot, and we have, I think one of the innovative things we have is a permission system that allows you to not have people stalking you and seeing what your whole life is, yet you can still share that with the people that you trust and that you know. So you can say, I want to share this just with my friends. I want to share this piece of content just with my coworkers. And some content you might want to just share publicly, just like you'd have a blog type of thing as well. We also have a mobile application, so we know that people want to get to their content no matter where they are or what they're doing. So we have a version that works in a web-enabled phone mobile service, and you can search this kind of knowledge base that you've built up for yourself, and you can basically kind of mine the brains of all your friends and find things that you want to remember for yourself no matter where you are.
Great, thanks. William Vogt from MyNewMo.com.
Hi. MyNewMo is a collection of artists that come together in a community to take their created music and images and videos and soon text, and what we do is make it possible for them to sell it into mobile. And by that I mean actually sell it with carrier billing and carrier delivery. And beyond MyNewMo itself and the community that is on MyNewMo, we also give people the tools, the sort of Web 2.0 components, to be able to show and sell their mobile content from MySpace or any other blog or website possible. And we have thousands of artists that have generated some really unique long tail type mobile content. And I'll just mention that today I just got an email that In the International Herald Tribune, Informa announced that the total value of user-generated content on mobile now exceeds $3 billion. That's a pretty interesting statistic. So hopefully we'll talk more about monetizing.
Great. Next up is Aaron Cohen from Bolt Media.
So leave it to Informa to broadly define what user-generated content is in mobile. I guess that would include like all multimedia messaging.
No, they're talking about Cyberworld and CBTV mostly.
Oh, yeah, they're talking about the Korean market.
Well, CBTV is in Europe, not in Korea yet, but
Okay.
it wasn't Korea.
I see, okay, all right, well, I guess that's okay. Hi, Bolt is a, what we call a creative network. Our original intent with the business the last 6 months, it's a 10-year-old company. We're actually celebrating our 10th year this year. And we're doing that by trying to get as many music labels as we can to sue us. The company has had relaunched itself 6 months ago as a kind of file upload and proliferation business, and has layered on a lot of community functionality to allow people to kind of organize themselves and meet each other through content. So if you think about the kind of user-generated media continuum, imagine if I had slides here, and you were looking at a user-generated media continuum. On one side of that continuum are the social sites, which are clearly MySpace and Facebook, and on the other far side would be YouTube for sure, right? Because raise your hand if you've been to YouTube. Okay, raise your hand if you have friends on YouTube. Okay, so very few of you, right? So YouTube is not a friend site. So I sort of think of YouTube and PhotoBucket as the file upload and proliferation and sharing business. And I certainly think PhotoBucket deserves to be in that category, and it's big right now. So, and I think of MySpace and Facebook on this side. So Bolt is trying to be in that middle space, inhabit what we call a creative network, which is to get people to organize and meet each other through content. We think of the current generation as being enormously creative, and clearly that creativity extends to mobile, and clearly the content making and sharing extends to, wow, it never ceases to happen. I always have to kill it. The ringtones always go off on the panel. It's amazing. I think that'll do for now. Okay.
I have to admit, Aaron, it was funny when you said imagine if you had slides, because you were the only one who didn't send in a slide. And I created this for you, so I was imagining
Oh, really?
maybe you had a slide.
Yeah, I'm not a big slide guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we'll get back to your point, which I think is a great one around the continuum of user-generated content. Michael Jones, founder and president of UserPlane.
So I'm Mike Jones. UserPlane is a company that provides messaging applications primarily to social networks. So we work with around 900 to 1,000 different communities. Our big ones being MySpace, Friendster, and then small ones being tiny little communities you've probably never heard of. And they basically license our tools, integrate them within their websites, and we support that infrastructure. UserPlane in essence has no users, but our network itself supports between 2 and 3 million unique users a day across all of our different partner sites. We have, like I said, about 900 to 1,000 kind of dedicated communities and around 150,000 micro communities that kind of use a self-service piece of our application. So we've been around for about 4 years. We recently became part of AOL, so we're now kind of an extension of the AIM brand, but we maintain quite a bit of autonomy from AOL, so UserPlane still exists in form.
And last is Michael from Helio.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Michael Grossi, VP in Strategy and Biz Dev for Helio. For those of you who don't know who Helio is, it's an MVNO. It's a joint venture between SK Telecom and Earthlink. It's about a little under $500 million in funding. Our focus is on the young, connected consumer. We do that through kind of cutting-edge services that we bring to bear, as well as our own exclusive devices. Such as this, which is one of our devices we launched with, which is a Sidekick kick flip, excuse me. And we also launched with our Black Hero device here back in earlier this year. We have the MySpace application that we built exclusively for mobile, exclusively for Helio. So we're excited about that. It's an indication of kind of the type of innovation that we have, so that we can bring it to bear in the marketplace.
Great, thanks. So this panel is titled Social Networking on Mobile and the Web. And my first question, and I'll start with Sean, since he's closest, is, you know, we talk about social networking, who's going to drive it on the whole between mobile and web? Are we going to see more web social networking move further and further to mobile, and vice versa? Are there mobile social networks that can accumulate steam and get over to the website? And is either side going to win, or is it a whole new set of players that takes social networking on mobile and the web?
I think that social networking is akin to instant messaging, right? This is something that is free and ad-supported on the web, but is directly monetized in the mobile space. The reason it's able to be directly monetized in the mobile space is because it already exists on the web. And so these, gigantic collections of users are undeniably valuable in the mobile space. That said, the mobile space in general, sort of belongs to a handful of these gatekeepers, right, that control the billing mechanism for their millions of paying subscribers. And so there's sort of a natural match between the biggest on the web and sort of the biggest in the mobile space. They come together and they create great things. I think that is the first and biggest opportunity for mobile social networking, because you're taking existing user behavior and you're just sort of bolting on a mobile experience and making it that much easier. That having been said, I think Bill's company, MyNumo, has tremendous value, because it's an example of a company that is sort of bridging the gap between the mobile experience and a sort of web experience, taking the best of the mobile space, and let's just for the sake of argument say that that's a near frictionless billing mechanism, and sort of applying it to this user behavior. So I think they're definitely hybrids, but in the mobile space, the carriers rule, and you have to sort of play by their rules, and what they want is what's going to happen first.
So Bill, what does social networking mean to you guys at MyNumo?
Well, as well said, is that we basically enable a social network of creatives to actually, with online tools or online support, get their content through that sort of walled garden into the carrier approval for billing and delivery of content. So, for example, the best example I can give is lately, about 2 weeks ago, someone called me up and said, hey, I'm doing Christian hip hop, can I get my stuff on your site and make it available to my fans? I go, sure, why not? Everyone else does, no charge, go ahead and do it. And overnight, suddenly they were the largest volume seller. Suddenly, like, the blogs are just filling up with all their ringtones going over the market. And the reason for that was because there was demand, and there was no way for those fans to get that stuff onto their phones. It just wasn't there. And because we have the carrier billing, it is frictionless. Frictionless in our minds is both the shopping experience, and we focus extraordinarily hard on the experience of buying content, and also the publishing experience. No one wants to have to know about the 500 formats for images or the 50 formats for audio. We totally hide that from the creatives. It's all done for them, and that's what we provide. We're basically providing that connection. And if you look at it, the #1 consumers of mobile content are actually the same demographic as the #1 users of social networks. It's a natural marriage. The MySpace generation is also the same generation that actually buys ringtones.
Right. So from your point of view, you're not tackling social networking per se, like the MySpace, the Facebook approach.
Well, we're not going to necessarily go head to head with them, but we are doing social network applications that are in the works. One thing I will say that I can talk about is I think text is one of the most underestimated mobile content areas that we're going to jump in really hard on, which means basically this. If you can create interesting messages that people care about, whether it's a surf report at Malibu and someone wants to subscribe to it, we're going to let you do that. We're going to enable that and get that through the carriers and all that, so you can be able to be a self-publisher of mobile useful content. And if you know anyone at the aggregators, this text messaging stuff is so, horoscopes and jokes is an enormous revenue generator. And so everyone should be able to participate in that. We're going to only succeed if the users actually succeed, if they actually make money on their content. And that's what our goal is, to make everyone a profit. They're all profitable, make them all happy.
So maybe Michael Jones, take us back a little bit towards the original question around social networking itself. You're obviously a huge enabler of these social networks, this communication, and Sean referred to it as IM, which is certainly right up User Plains alley. So talk a little bit about the convergence of mobile social networking as you see it today, internet social networking, and where that goes over the next couple of years.
Sure. I mean, we've been involved in online communities from social networking, which was really kind of originally online dating, right? So a lot of the online dating companies were some of the first companies to jump into mobile online dating, where you can flip through pictures, receive IMs on your phone on people that you're interested in the site. And what we found was that a lot of sites launched in the mobile online dating marketplace, where they were trying to be standalone sites with no really like physical web presence, but all completely a mobile experience, and they basically failed. So what we really believe is that the phone is just an extension of your web browser. We, from an instant messaging perspective, get very excited about it from the presence side of it, where somebody can have presence with their phone and they can be out and about, and they can be in their on their computer, and you can take that presence with you so that you're kind of reachable. I think what's been most exciting for online dating and social networking is that for transactions that they couldn't charge for on the web, they can charge for them on the phone. And so because there is this really low barrier to basically building somebody on the phone, because kids are basically used to paying for premium wallpaper through reverse SMS or paying for SMS messages, it now provides a billing platform that really isn't there on the web. So just as you talked to a lot of social networks, then Cyworld has been one of the greatest examples in that they've actually put together a micro-payment system where people can buy clothes for their characters on Cyworld. A lot of the US social networks haven't really nailed down the true micro-payments positioning, where you can pay for a cool little badge for your MySpace page, but on the phone, it's already in place, so suddenly it represents a pretty big revenue jump. I think what I'd love to hear about is how Helio's responded to it, because Helio, we've done a lot of work with MySpace. Helio definitely came out of the gates with MySpace Mobile. How's the pickup been with that?
It's been phenomenal, actually. The vast majority of our members are actually using MySpace on a regular basis. So it's by far our number one performing application service.
Has it driven a lot of phone sales overall?
I think it's one of the variables that people consider, but to sit here and say that it's the only reason people will come here would be an erroneous thing. I think when people look to Helio, they look to us because they're looking for something that's different and unique that's not available in the marketplace. So whether that's our own cool, unique devices, or the 3G experience on those devices, or the services that we're bringing to bear, it's the combination of those things. It's also the customer experience, the stuff that people don't want to talk about, maybe that aren't as sexy, the billing aspects as well, all those things take into play. I will say, obviously, SK Telecom was, obviously, is one of the parent companies in RJB, and thank you for the mention of Cyworld, was the first to generate Cyworld, which is mobile social networking at its birth, at its infancy. So some, 90 million people use Cyworld today. It's their form of online communication, which they don't have broadband online access. So, we obviously used and leveraged SK and their technologists to build the application, because it's not as easy as some think. But MySpace, that's a piece of it, right? I mean, for our group, I think Simone's mentioned IMing, texting, MMS. These are all forms of communicating with each other's friends. Our users are texting over 200 text messages a month. This is a group that has a voracious appetite to not only discover something, but to share it and communicate it with their group of friends. So, those are all important attributes of what I think kind of hold up this tenet of this concept of social networking on mobile. And I think those that can bring it to bear in a nice, coordinated fashion is good, because MySpace, for many intents purposes, and it has high entertainment value to it. And for the younger consumer, where email is the formal way for communicating, IMing and networking and talking through email via their social network, whether it be MySpace or others, is kind of their predominant form of communication.
The audience wants to know how many MySpace users are on Helio. Is that a question you answer in these things?
So I could say the vast majority of our members are using it, so you can do the math on that one. But it's suffice to say, it's proven out that it was a smart thing for us to do, and a good first step. Lots more of innovation, following the same vein of focusing on our connected consumer will be coming.
And what happens in February when, from what I've heard, MySpace and Helio part ways on an exclusive deal? Do you keep the MySpace relationship alive? And in terms of your strategy, it was a great first step. Where do you go from there?
Sure. Well, I can't comment obviously on the specifics of the deal, but suffice to say, we have a very long-term relationship with MySpace. There are elements that are exclusive, that will remain exclusive for the duration of the agreement. So I know there's a lot of talk in the press about exclusivity ending. In fact, it's only just beginning. So we'll continue to innovate through new and advanced services and kind of the next gen form of that.
Right. Can you give that flavor before I move on, just to understand kind of social networking on mobile, the kinds of things that your users are doing with MySpace on the mobile phone?
Sure. So very much, so if you're familiar with MySpace, you can email, you can blog, you can update your blog, you can post pictures, you can accept friends. All of those same features and functionality that you do on MySpace today, you can do on MySpace Mobile and Helio. It was important to have those same attributes available. So they are doing those same things. They are out and about and pulling up their homepage to be able to share the photos that are on their site. They're accepting friends, they're emailing their friends. Uploading photos is a big hot button amongst MySpace members, and if you're a Helio member, you get to upload more pictures than you can if you were just a MySpace member. So that's a good thing. So they're using it for that. So it's more about living life as it happens. It's taking pictures in the club, instantaneously posting that to your page, and then forwarding that onto your friends via MMS. So versus waiting until I get back to my computer, next day, I upload photos and I send an email around, it's less timely. And for this young consumer, it's really about consuming things now and sharing it as needed as possible.
Okay, Aaron, you got any comment on the young consumer and mobile and user-generated content?
Well, the biggest comment I have is, Bolt makes, the wireless carriers are our second biggest advertising category, so we are immensely close to the carriers themselves on the marketing side, and that's actually, I don't want to say forced, but we've been strongly encouraged at Bolt to find ways of increasing the size of our relationship from a data services perspective. In fact, the wireless carriers, particularly Singular and Verizon, are very interested in marketing the co-branded services that we do together. So my budgets sort of increase as we bring some mobile functionality to the Bolt side. So what I can say, and I don't know how many subs Helio has, what I do know is that Singular and Verizon Wireless are very, very, and T-Mobile to some extent, are very focused on MySpace and Facebook and us. Particularly, I think that there are very high-level, incredibly thoughtful and sophisticated deals coming. So, and probably that's good.
What's the flavor of those deals coming?
Well, those deals are, non-exclusive, generally non-exclusive. They are tool integration, low level, not nearly as robust as what was been described with Helio by Michael, but I think they are, the data that I've heard come in just in terms of sort of text messaging related to alerts is really, really significant in the case of MySpace. So they are, my own feeling about social networking, by the way, and this may sound a little odd to you since I suppose I'm in the cap, we're sort of, treated as a social network site and a video site. People are a little sort of schizophrenic about how they want to speak about the company. I've always been a little schizophrenic, so it's been fun with me. But I think the reality of social networking is, MySpace has been increasing, Facebook has been flattening, and other than Bebo, which is kind of growing around the world, everybody else, Bolt increased really quite substantially in September, but now we've also gone from 2 million to 6 million uniques. But now we've leveled off a little bit. There are tremendous network externalities at, an eBay-like sensibility at MySpace. So I am really one of the most bullish supporters of the company. It is incredibly trendy in big media companies for people to say that MySpace is ephemeral. I really strongly disagree with that. I think News Corp is doing a terrific job. And what I do think is possible is to innovate beyond social networking and different riffs on social networking.
So is your take that basically MySpace has owned social networking and it's kind of proven that and is probably going to own it for the next 3 to 5 years, if not longer?
What I believe is that MySpace is a de facto extension of social life for the vast majority of Americans between, say, 14 and 20-ish.
Right, but you saw the average age of the MySpace
Yeah,
users,
but of
apparently
course-
35.
Yeah, well, that's not the, I mean, I don't know what average is,
Right.
right? All of
Does
us,
that include the House of Representatives?
right,
Yeah.
that's funny.
All right, well, let's move
All
on. I wanna
of
get-
us are comprised of kind of, I mean, Dorian, I think it's important for people who don't know the social networking business. Every community is a 2080 community. We all have power users who generate a significant majority of our page views. And trust me, it's not 35-year-olds on MySpace that are generating the vast majority of their page.
Right, good point.
Because I hang out there all the time.
Before we get back, I want to get back, Darren, some of the great comments you made around text messaging and the volume of revenues and the way carriers are thinking about it. So I do want to get to that. I want to bring Mike in too on your approach, because you started on the website, I think, and then bringing mobile. So how are you thinking about web social networking and bringing that to mobile?
Yeah, we are a young company, and we did start on the web, and our core user base is web, and like we were talking about demographics, I kind of think ourselves as MySpace for grown-ups, or people who are more interested in sharing information and knowledge with each other, not necessarily just browsing profiles and looking at pictures. So our core demographic is a young professional market, so we would have people who are kind of younger, maybe the 22 to 30 demographic. They are maybe just out of college, they've moved across the country, they're not near their friends anymore, they don't really have time to be spending a lot of time browsing lots of social networking sites, but they find in Blue Dot a way to stay connected with their friends and to share information. They have a lot of the same interests, they were friends in school, and they want to stay in touch with those people, and so Blue Dot is a great way to kind of maintain those relationships with people. I have for myself, from a long time ago, some high school buddies in Texas, and I would call them like once a year, and didn't really get to know them very well, and Blue Dot has been a great way to kind of stay in touch with them, and we're all really busy, but I can see what he's finding on the web in a very non-interruptive way. So, and that's kind of a core value of our company is being convenient and non-interruptive, and so even in the mobile space, you have text messaging, which is kind of mostly synchronous. You kind of expect your friends to get that text message right away, and you're going to look at it. We provide kind of an asynchronous mode on top of a mobile scenario. You have basically this knowledge base that's in the cloud where you built that up on the web. It's kind of hard to create content on your phone. Kids are really great at typing a lot of text, but if you really want to develop something bigger than that and have richer comments, we do that on the website. And then we think the mobile platform is really a great way to then access that content and have it anywhere you are. So with our interface on mobile is really more about searching that and being able to get to it and less about kind of content creation and be able to do kind of this asynchronous stuff. So if my friends are creating, they might dot a restaurant or something that's great in LA, and I can come here and type in a neighborhood name and find a great recommendation for my friends without interrupting them, and I'm just out on the street doing that.
When you think about taking your web application mobile as a startup, thinking and looking at the carrier environment, what are you thinking? I mean, what's the strategy there for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty daunting for us to we have no relationship with carriers, and a very small group of people. Building a web service is something that you can do with a pretty skeleton team. You don't have to have a lot of people to kind of build a really good service for that. And so we're really looking at kind of more of the open platforms, things where web-enabled phones would give you access to mobile rendered web pages directly, so we don't have to go to carriers to say, we're not looking to carriers to be a distribution mechanism for our site and get on deck with an application, because we can do a lot through just kind of web interfaces that are going to be available. I think on every phone, it's going to be more toward the smartphone level, and they will all have kind of down-level web access. So you can do a lot with that.
Right. Michael Rossi, how should you be thinking about the environment? If you're, I mean, obviously, we just heard of Facebook, MySpace, the carriers are all thinking about them. Are they thinking about other web environments? What's that?
We forgot Bolts.
And, sorry, and the third one that we all think about. I agree. So maybe you can answer the question then, and then we'll pass it to Michael. How should the carriers be thinking about these web communities that are all thinking about, I think pretty unanimously up in the valley, any web community is thinking about mobile. You know, how are the carriers thinking about those web companies? Sure.
So I think, frankly, that's where the opportunity is for Helio, right? I don't think that large carriers are aggressively pursuing the social networking space. And the reason, and obviously they're pursuing it, but they have lots of initiatives going on. They're big companies and they're focused on the mass market. They have lots of messages that they're stipulating in their marketing. So yes, they're obviously going to come out with these applications. Will they be as robust? Will they be as easy to find on the deck? Will they be as easy to navigate from a user experience standpoint? Will they have as much functionality to them? Those kinds of things, such that a person who's using it will realize, is it a subpar experience or is it a premium experience? So I think there's, even though you may see larger carriers come out with it, it will not be up to snuff for a lot of the users that are online. I think online obviously provides a pretty robust experience, and to be able to emulate that via mobile, you've got to worry about connectivity and speeds and having devices that are obviously 3G enabled for the faster speeds that are optimal for showing video and taking video. So it's the entire user experience that's kind of an essential ingredient. So even if and they will, I know they're all talking about it and we'll be making some announcements soon. It's just that those kind of attributes I think will be
Right. So I want to get Darren to comment as well, but Michael is, I would say that, if you're a web-oriented system, hearing that would be great, right? Maybe I should go knock on your door, your VP of Business Development, let's make a deal, and I'm sure you get a lot of companies approaching you. But can Helio move from an exclusive relationship with MySpace that probably sends the message that, hey, we're working with the giant, leave us alone for a while? Are you going to move more aggressively into a much more open strategy with web companies out there, or what does that mean strategy-wise for you guys?
I would say that obviously social networking is a pretty broad term, whether that's in location-based services, video services, photography services. There's obviously lots of partners that are playing in those spaces, which there's a lot of opportunity here, I think, still that exists within mobile. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Can we ask one point of clarification? So right now, with the Helio MySpace relationship, are you guys basically, are you just framing a MySpace WAP-enabled webpage, and then you also happen to put them on your deck, which basically means they're on your primary menu? Or are they writing specific code that does specific things for Helio?
So a little bit of both. So more of the former. We actually built an application that is optimized for our devices. It is a WAP-based application.
Oh, so you built it for MySpace?
Yes.
That's
Okay.
of course they did. Because
Right.
the competencies are totally different.
Right. But a lot of the most recent web communities are basically prepping now to launch a WAP-enabled version of their social network, as well as a standard web-enabled version. And then the negotiation is really getting that WAP-enabled version as a primary link on that phone's default deck.
Right. So absolutely. So placement is key, and obviously for us, MySpace is one of the premier partners. So you're going to see them right within our web page, easy to see. I think also
Is placement always going to be key?
Absolutely.
It's always going to be key?
Absolutely. Yeah, you've got to have, you got to find it, 1-2 clicks away, or it just gets lost. I think it's a big problem. with
Isn't there an argument, though, that the most loyal users of websites will take their websites with them on a mobile phone?
Well, it's the same way that the web initially started, right? Because you had browsers that had pre-enabled buttons at the top.
Right.
To go to AOL.com or Netscape.com or whatever, and the way that they're basically doing on the phones now, where eventually people just type in the URLs and have a bookmark list. Maybe Delicious will have a mobile bookmark list that'll tie into your web bookmark list, and suddenly it'll just be, I can go to Friendster on my BlackBerry. Friendster doesn't have, maybe they claim they did a big mobile push, but no one's talking about it, right? So, in a certain sense, every website's mobile enabled. It's really if they have the ability, it's really who's making money off of it, right?
I'd say the other way too is obviously for the ultimate experience is a client-based application, right? Versus WAP. The WAP is nice, but you're relying on the network a lot of times for the speed and the turnaround time.
Yep.
So Nirvana is having a client that's embedded on the device that it's not downloadable, it's on devices.
I mean, I don't know. Raise your hand if you've been like talking about the mobile industry for a decade about how great it's going to be. I mean, like that's right. Like, mobile, rock and roll, the next Nirvana thing. I mean, here's the thing, right? What we have is a country that's broadband enabled, and every person has a computer, right? And it's more fun to have, I mean, we're kind of an isolated society, right? You guys watch Weeds, right? With all the Range Rovers coming out one at a time from the kind of suburban. You should, by the way, watch Weeds if you don't watch it, because it's a cool show and a real interesting take on suburbia. It's a series of homes with walls in them, and what the social networks have done at their core is extended a core sensibility of what I call people under 30. What is the number one thing people under 30 think about?
Each other.
Sex and music. That's right. I mean, dating. So I like to call it dating because I'm old, right? I mean, I run a site that has a lot of young people on it. So, but I think that it's really, the question is, there have been these cycles, Lori, there have been a couple of cycles in the last few years that it's vital for us to recognize how swiftly they're consolidating. There was a social networking cycle that MySpace clearly dominates today. It's not even a question, they have 80% of the share. We were sitting here talking about them in the meeting a lot. I'm the one I'm in their deck. They talk about Bolt has X and we have like 10X. I'm in their advertising sales deck, Bolt is. So, for me to be sitting and talking about how great they are, it's kind of unique, right? So, because they're great, and YouTube has consolidated. I mean, I just watched a panel with Rever and Vio and, a bunch of different people. Well, YouTube has literally 10,000x the reach of these kind of emerging video players.
Right. So what's the next wave?
So the next wave, well, from our perspective, it's hard to say what the next wave is going to be. Here's where we're betting. It's collaboration, right? It's collaboration. It's people making, this is the most creative generation that's ever lived. And I totally agree with Michael. If Helio can figure out a way to make this work, it makes them a value-added MVNO. It turned out for ESPN that, at the end of the day, people didn't want, they could get, whatever, you don't need SportsCenter on your phone, it's not good enough. That was the issue, I think. I mean, Michael could probably talk to that more, but I think we think it's collaboration. We think the wiki framework is very interesting because it shows that collaboration is something that's important to people. And we think, we know from our experience where people upload thousands of files, lots of which they make themselves, that people are interested in finding an audience. And so I think if you think of MySpace as a high school hallway, or for you, Dory, you might think of it as like a bar, right? If you really believe the 35-year-old thing. I think of it more as a high school hallway. And if you think of Facebook as a college quad, you can certainly think of Bolt as open mic night, right? There are different reasons that people participate in social communities, but I think the thing that's coming is, and where mobile can support that, is collaboration and then the alerts that collaborating are happening. Because mobile is just an extension of your
Let's go to Sean. This sounds like a company I know Sean started a little while ago, so let him talk about collaboration as the next wave.
Well, if you want my opinion, there's a certain way that I think you have to look at this, and that's from the perspective of the last link on the value chain, which is the network operators. They view social networking as a construct. Okay, you can call it what you want; it doesn't matter. It's communication. When I say construct, I mean think about email, right? Every email client you've ever used is the exact same thing: inbox, outbox, send items, drafts, attachments. That's email. Okay, IM's the same thing. When I buy a list, I got presents, you're online, you're not. That's all that is, right? Okay, fine. So that's a construct, and as such, you can call it anything you want. You can call it AIM, you can call it MSN, you can call it, whatever. But it fits a construct. Social networking, it turns out, to be called that, to really be called social networking, looks sort of the same way, right? Every social networking site has a profile pic. It has a profile, it has contact options, it has a friends list, it has a blog, it has public comments, generally speaking. It has this sort of list of about 12 things that makes it social networking, right? As a construct, the carriers are going to deploy it as a construct. You can look for it, actually, Michael, I thought, really hit the nail on the head there. You'll see a thick client application, the same way that you see a thick client application for IM and email on carrier decks. You'll see these generally preloaded. You'll start to see these around the end of the first quarter. And there will be a handful of partners on these carrier decks. Yes, all the ones that you sort of, that are popping into mind, right? MySpace, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. But also, because it's a construct, you can look at the vertical opportunity as well. Companies like Community Connect, right through Asian Avenue, Black Planet, Nihente, where they're taking that construct, the way that people communicate and share information and create community, and applying it to certain verticals. And there are umpteen, million, billion, whatever verticals that you could apply that same construct to, because all you're really doing is creating community. So, I just wanted to make the comment that we may simply be overthinking what the opportunity is and how these two worlds are going to collide. And I would remind you that the carriers are not as stupid as everyone sort of likes to say that they are. They're slow, they're behind the times, they're a bunch of bellheads. They're not. They're very smart at monetizing their base, right? And anytime something looks like communication, they know how to monetize that base. And I gave that example earlier about IM on purpose, because that's something that you can think of as being close in model to the web-based experience, right? It's free and ad-supported. The problem is that free and ad-supported, so far anyway, in the mobile space, and I would agree that perhaps the jury's still out on that doesn't exactly work, right? It may eventually, but it doesn't quite work. But this is, as communication, it can be directly monetized, and we've seen a very good analog in the mobile space with IM that you can take a communication-based experience and monetize directly. That will be phase one in the sort of, accepting of course the MySpace Helium thing, if you want to say that was phase one, WAP. Here's the problem with WAP. Web is inherently limited, right? I mean, if all of these guys like Bolt, has really seen a resurgence on video, right? That's been sort of where everything is going toward video and that kind of thing. WAP simply doesn't have the capability to really, provide that. So I've seen the future. I know where it's going, and that's where it's going. Hope that's helpful.
That's great. Hey, William, you wanted to jump in there.
Well, one thing I'd say is I would echo these comments. No one's going to take away the user base of MySpace anytime soon. It's sort of like, why isn't there a number to eBay? Well, eBay created critical mass, got there, and they hold their position. MySpace is going to hold their position. I see the analytics, and the smartest thing that ever happened was we created a widget for MySpace so they could show and sell mobile content. That's a lot of our traffic. But in terms of like this idea that we're going to build a client for the phone, the only comment I'd have on that is if anyone's ever built a client for the phone, you will know that it is a nightmare building clients for feature phones. Not so much smartphones, but feature phones. The phones like the Razr. For example, the Razr has Bluetooth, but lo and behold, the Bluetooth software interface is pretty much broken. And this goes on and on. The people who really deserve the most credit for this pitiable situation is probably Sun Microsystems. They never bothered testing anything as far as I can see. I mean, it's pretty awful. So,
does that lead to the entrenchment of the Googles, the Yahoos, the Games, the AOLs, the MySpaces now into the phone? Because if anyone's going to figure it out,
Google's going to own mobile search probably, and MySpace is going to own mobile community probably. Maybe
disagree, Sean. Why do you disagree?
I disagree because you're taking an experience. You use Google as an example, right? Excellent search tool. I think everyone here uses search on the web. It's Google, fine, I get that. In the mobile space, it's not relevant. Search for Manhattan. It doesn't know where Manhattan is, right? They're a location-based sort of search tool. It's got a long way to go. And users searching for stuff on their mobile phone are not thinking search the way they are on the web, like a giant haystack of web addresses. Web addresses in the mobile space, it's like an irrelevant concept.
Don't you think people at Google know that? I mean, aren't there people in a room that are sitting there going, I'm
I'm
not sure if this is the same thing?
You're absolutely right, Dorian, but here's the problem, is that Google has no sway in Verizon Wireless. Right? They come in and they say, we're Google, let us in. And Verizon Wireless says, F you, we're Verizon Wireless.
Who's the more valuable? Let me raise one, because I heard a comment.
It's really important to actually, interestingly enough, you should look at Verizon Wireless's revenue and free cash flow.
Right.
This is a company that did $8 billion in revenue last quarter with $4 billion in free cash flow.
I mean, Singular's right there with them. But just a second, I want to address this point though. I mean, didn't Google convince all the carriers to let free SMSs flow in an alert-based way that
That they are
didn't exist
all backing
before.
away from them. That they are all backing away
I
from
mean,
them.
it's like, you know.
Famously Vodafone.
Yeah, I mean, Singular, for example, will not let you deliver content if you bill for credit card. They've made that clear, they've sent that out to anyone. Any
Sure.
company that's out there that has a model that says, we're gonna let people sell content and we'll let them charge people on their credit card, and they're delivering for Singular, time is short.
But just a second, so that's PayPal and Singular, right? PayPal tried to do it, and Singular stopped. PayPal said, hey, we want to figure this thing out.
They said
Do you think they're going to figure that out? I mean, isn't there something
Why would they
there
give
on
up
the
their,
horizon?
why would they give up their strongest source of revenue, which is premium billing for digital data? And the same thing with Verizon. Verizon is the kind of company where no matter how big you are, you go to them, they're not gonna really care. And there's a very big truth about that. Verizon's a huge company.
But we were talking about this notion of who's going to own what on the phone, among the phones, and I think that, and it tends to be a big issue at conferences like this one. You get so much derivative, imitative stuff, and at the end of the day, what's really interesting is when you start talking about things that aren't what everyone else is doing. I think Michael made an incredible point about Helio. It actually makes me, kind of reinvigorates me about the MVNO space, which we all know has its challenges on the retail side and pricing and a whole set of other things. The fact of the matter is, if Helio was sick, if like it changed your life because of using the phone, people would get it. People would get it. That's the way the world works these days. The fact of the matter is YouTube's very cool. You know, so people use it. And, you know, other things are less cool because there's not as much stuff there. Again, network externalities. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for innovation in the mobile space. And I think what's interesting about it is generally all of us sitting up here think, well, it's got to come from us, not them, because they don't innovate, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact is, you know, I mean, there's a real opportunity in Helio's case because they don't innovate, they're dead. That's reality, right? I mean, like, you know, I don't know if you want to go on the record and say that, but like, either you're going to be cooler, or you're not going to be here.
Well, you know, the question to Helio is how can we start selling content on Helio?
Well, let me jump in here. So, thank you for that. Obviously, Helio, I think there's a number of ways that in wireless one can dig. Like, one stems from how you set up, from the simple thing of how you set up your pricing plans. You know, we're talking about lots of very cool, innovative services, but if you don't make it easy for the end consumer to purchase those, it really doesn't matter. It's just going to sit blamelessly on the deck somewhere. So I think, first of all, having what we have is an all-in data package, right? So you sign up for Helio because you want to use data services, okay? Whether that data services being SMS messaging services, MySpace, surfing, using Yahoo search, MMS, texting, it's all unlimited, you don't have to think about it, right? Whereas today, most of the carriers have tons of billing plans, and it's very highly confusing, and to get a service might cost you an MRC of, you know, $3 or $4 a month, and it's just one more bill the carriers try to stick me on. There's ample additional opportunity on top of that. So on top of your data plan for downloadables. So whether it be music videos, music, ringtones, screensavers, there's incredible amounts of revenue opportunity, and we're seeing 3x what I thought we would see, frankly, in terms of that. So I think there is that, but again, it's an entertainment value, and games, etc., which again is a very social element to it as well. So we have this billing platform where you can gift or beg. So any piece of that downloadable content, you can gift it to a friend, or you can beg it from a friend via sending an SMS text where it shows up. So it's kind of an innovative billing mechanism to allow for sharing and community and that kind of thing. So I think, where a lot of the larger carriers will struggle is because, like someone said down here, with a client app, it's device specific. They have multiple devices, multiple network technologies, coverage issues, etc. So we're fortunate that as Helio, we don't have any legacy issues. We design and build our own devices with our partners. So we're able to control that experience. We're able to control the chip level as well as the software level. So that gives us some unique, advantages there, which allows us to innovate faster and then provide kind of an experience that is more unique and more compelling. Because if it's not a great user experience, the speed sucks, people aren't going to use it. So it's got to be.
Here's the thing. That sounds to me like this is all. I have to say, I'm embarrassed to say, a little bit news to me. Like you've built the stadium, if you will, or you built the track. But what's going in? Because obviously ringtones, who cares, right? I mean, that's, but who at Helio is saying, let's do this, like that gift bag thing is very cool. You know, I mean, like, where, are there like tons of people doing that?
Yeah,
And
so
like
we
saying,
get
"Let's go for it"?
3x, just to give you an idea, so we get 3x the amount of industry, downloads, for example, on games, 3x the industry average, 3 times. 1 out of every 3 people gifts or bags for games.
Wow.
Which, again, surprises
Killer
people.
app.
So already, you know.
Killer app.
Well, let me ask this, Michael. I've seen business plans funded that depend on unlimited data plans to make that business successful. I've gone to Atlanta and heard directly that those businesses are crazy and don't even think about getting it funded because there's no way in hell that we're going to see unlimited data plans the way these businesses, you know, picture sharing, all of that, think it's going to be. So how do you...
Well, I mean, I look at it this way, from a carrier perspective, they've invested all this money in these networks, right? There's all this hype and talk about 3G, but if you don't have compelling services, nobody's just, it's highway lane, lamelessly sitting there, being unused. So we're proving is almost like a case study that if you create compelling services and let people don't even realize that they're consuming the data, they're going to use it in such a way that is a carrier's dream, right? I mean, we're seeing ARPU's over $100, so that includes our voice and our data, and plus there's, ARPU.
So there's no capacity issue or too much usage issue at all with kind of the approach you're taking?
No. I mean, I think there is danger, however, to do an all-you-can-eat voice, right? So we do all-you-can-eat data. All-you-can-eat voice, however, I think is more of a suicide pill. And there are those out there that are pushing that.
Well, the most successful carrier in terms of digital services is probably NTT Docomo, right? That being consensus. They're also the most expensive in terms of data charges. The reason why Docomo gives the artists or the people like me 91 cents on the dollar is because Docomo makes a fortune on data. And that has to be understood. So for example, the reason why T-Mobile, for example, is more difficult to get services improved than, let's say, Singular, is because T-Mobile charges less for data than Singular. Singular charges quite a bit for data, and I think it was a penny per kilobyte until very recently. I think they just reduced it. So it has to be understood. And the question, of course, when you come to data is, what if someone has a 3G phone and starts running Skype on it? Are you going to let them do that? Yeah. It's a big question.
Let's shift the discussion. I want to keep on monetization, but I'll carry on with you, William, about user-generated content. You talk a lot about the artists generating the content. Does that shift how carriers have been thinking about things, or does it fit into their strategy?
Well, the hardest thing about MyNumo, even though the technology is very impressive, is the business development to get the carriers to say, okay, you can be a content approver for us. You can have our rules, and you can decide whether something is worthy to be published, and you can handle the copyright issues, which are enormous. So yeah, artists that are creating content, I can't begin to tell you the number of items I see that have to be told that they're not suitable for a general audience, or the fact that every week someone tries to upload Wonderwall as a ringtone. But we have automated and semi-automated systems for that. Yeah, artists are creating content every day. And what we're doing is so simple. It's sort of like Cafe Press. If anyone know what Cafe Press is? T-shirts. It's basically that. And we're not just in mobile, we're also doing bringbacks for AOL's VoIP system as well. We're just trying to basically make it really easy for these artists who have been generating the content and showing it for free to monetize it. And mobile is a great marketplace, only because of the micropayment system. I actually like the carriers. They did create this micropayment system. Without it, I don't think you'd be seeing ringtones for $2 or $3.
So are you happy with the 40 to 50 to 55% to the
Yeah,
carriers?
actually, I'm okay with it as long as they keep the business going. I mean, what I mean by that is if they can manage to maintain the growth or stability of ringtones in the United States, Europe is a different story, and what happened in Europe is more about people abusing the system and the system sort of pulling back from that. But the ringtone market in the United States is about $600 million. Worldwide, it's about $7 billion. And the ringtone market will shift. And, everyone we talk to says, oh, video will be the big thing. So, of course, we were doing video. But, yeah, I'm happy that the marketplace exists. All through the internet in the 90s when I was involved in .coms, everyone was bitching because there wasn't a micropayment system of any kind. And it really thwarted the development of the web. On mobile, we have this beautiful micropayment system. And we can see the flow of what people are showing up from where and what content, and it's amazing. In fact, one of the more humorous things is when you get a piece of content that goes to an older demographic, you see it. We're very frustrated by the fact that this is a very difficult thing to do, and we make it easy for them. When we focus so much on the execution, that the carriers are actually very happy for us to do this.
Here's the problem. A good,
Dude, you are a buzz
a good
crusher.
example.
I don't blow my,
Really, yeah.
A good example
Come
of
on,
user-generated
can you
content.
go
A good example of user-generated content being monetized in the mobile space is CME TV on Breeze Network in the UK.
yeah, in fact, it's one of the biggest ones there.
Yeah, which is great.
They only use just 2 cents though, they use nothing.
Well, here's the problem with the volume of their service is a good deal of it.
It's adult.
Yeah, is amateur porn, right? And so, okay, all roads lead to Rome, that's fine.
Can't do that,
But
we can't allow that.
In the U.S. market, you absolutely can. So you're beholden to the rules of, an industry that has the most.
Greatest story about this of all
Tell
time. One of the major U.S. carriers actually told us, no pictures of women with 2 women in the same picture. I mean, period. No pictures with women. So we're sending out all these messages and turning off content. And they say, okay, what we meant was no pictures of 2 women kissing.
Okay, fair enough. So here you come full circle, right? Every carrier wants to deal with MySpace, but no one wants the stink of MySpace on them, right? And never mind monetizing that content. What if I monetized a piece of like Aaron, you're now being sued by a bunch of labels for copyright infringement. Okay, fair enough. So one.
If he keeps talking, it might be more than.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well,
I did turn off my phone.
But do you think any one of these carriers is going to launch, Bolt Mobile tomorrow and potentially be, liable for contributory copyright infringement? Absolutely not. I mean, so there are a lot of rules and roadblocks that you see in the space that you figured out, right? It looks like you figured out quite a bit. It is an enormous
Isn't it
opportunity.
MySpace that's going to figure it out? I mean, it's clear that another carrier is going to get an exclusive in a couple of months. Then it's going to be followed by the rest of the other carriers. Aren't they? Isn't that going that direction?
No. MySpace will not figure it out. The carriers will figure it out for MySpace, which has the potential to kill the user experience of MySpace. Something else could evolve, and MySpace is very valuable without the porn and copyright.
And I agree with Sean. I agree with Sean. There's a real execution risk about that. And News Corp is not eBay or Yahoo. They are not a technology company. This technology is very non-trivial. Believe me, I've watched it painfully for us. And so I think there is truth to that. That said, the one thing I'll say, Dorian, is, John Harabin, who runs the budget at Verizon Wireless, they spend $1 billion marketing, he runs media there. He has said that, at a conference that we put together, that he spoke at, he has said, look, I am well aware of the challenges user-generated media presents for my brand in terms of brand adjacency. But what can we do? They're there. That's where our demographic is. We have to reach them. So I think at the end of the day, that's kind of, I do think most marketers know that they have to flirt with this brand adjacency problem, and they have to do it. They kind of have a little bit of a don't ask, don't tell.
Having the Verizon Wireless logo next to a porn video on YouTube is a lot different from actually engaging contributory copyright infringement, on your network, for which you're liable for $150,000 per
It's a big issue.
Right.
I wonder,
Very big
Mike's been working, Mike Jones.
Really quick, Verizon audits us every day. And they do, all the carriers audit us.
Come on, they don't know. Verizon has 4 people working in the mobile content directory. If they're spending all their time working with you.
I get emails almost every week about something that is slightly, hey, you can't do this. And in fact, their guidelines are actually not that public.
Sure.
The way you get them is by subscribing to the Wall Street Journal. They have an article that
Right.
details all the. So yeah, they care.
Yeah, no, they care. It's a big issue, I think. But Mike, Jones, you've been working
They certainly care about
on the website with a lot of brands and the approach to social networking. You talked that you're starting to think about AOL Mobile now that you're part of that. How are you thinking about the carrier, issue?
As far as illegal content goes, specifically?
No, I think when it comes to some of the brands you work with, that's not as big an issue. They're not doing the user-generated use of.
Sure, but I think
type
illegal
stuff.
content in the web is kind of an ironic statement because, at the end of the day, YouTube was built on illegal content, right? I mean, MySpace, we built MySpace Music, and we launched it, ran it in MySpace for the first 9 months. They didn't have any permission from the labels to have all the songs on that site,
And they still don't.
And they still don't, right? So ironically, if you guys are allowing streaming through Helio, then Helio is in essence enabling illegal content sharing through, even though it's MySpace song, but Helio is fine with it. So you're suddenly getting this point where the invention of the web is pushing a lot of degrees of illegality or challenging current laws as it relates to copyright or privacy or content production. And it's really unfortunate. And I talk to a lot of sites that want to launch MySpace competitive music services, and I first asked them, well, do you have to do it legally? And they said, yes. And I said, just don't bother. Don't even bother launching it. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to win that game. Because there's a lot of sites that are taking the gamble of running illegal content, and they're getting bought for some just unbelievable reason, right? And they're hoping that basically the new acquirers can be able to figure out the legal issues in the long run. I mean, Aaron knows more about this than anyone else. I mean, literally, probably anyone else at this point. So what happens to you, Aaron? What happens to this label thing?
First of all, I think, so I've had an interesting week, it's true.
They announced that basically Volt and Grouper that was acquired by Sony are the two sites being sued.
Right.
This is Universal Music.
Yeah, so, listen, here's what I'm prepared to say about this publicly, which is that we obviously need to resolve this with Universal and frankly everyone else. And I think that what we have here is a kind of test case about whether companies that involve file sharing, the movement of files, and by the way, the big argument in the Universal, interestingly enough, the big argument in this particular lawsuit appears to be that when we convert to Flash, we take files and convert to Flash. Do you guys do that? Okay, so Photobucket does it. Of course, YouTube and MySpace do it. YouTube really kind of standardized that, I think, and we all sort of imitated that. The argument is that in our conversion from Flash, we are altering that file, and therefore we are out of the safe harbor of the DMCA. So that's where they're going to test. And I'm obviously not looking to litigate, and I obviously want to make it work with them. But I think what's at stake in the Universal lawsuit of Volt, and I feel differently about Grouper, which does allow downloads, which we do not. Okay, there is a distinction there. Okay, and it's two separate lawsuits. I think the test is really about whether file sharing is going to exist as a legal business in the United States, or if all of these businesses, whether they are YouTube, MySpace, Bolt or Grouper or any of them, are going to migrate to places where there's no safe harbor. In fact, there's no safety. So we bought a website called Music Video Codes. For those of you who don't know, Music Video Codes is when you take it's like it means Band-Aid to a 22-year-old. Okay, in other words, it's the generic word for taking HTML code, cutting and pasting it into your Zanga or MySpace profile, and it plays a music video. That site, when we bought it, was stealing the bandwidth of videos from Yahoo and AOL. I shut that site down. That's illegal. So we don't do that anymore. But the point is this: this is a generation that's expectation is to play and mix and share content. Today, the Music Video Codes business survives beautifully with 100 different sites all over the world, none of which are really here. Okay? So I think we need to work this out. This is going to be a really important dialogue for the country, for the media industry, for a lot of people, because, and not the least of which is the Bolt shareholders. But my sense is this is not now. My understanding is that there's been a lot of discussion of Napster. I can tell you that I think I want to play fairly. I think, and so do my colleagues. I think my colleagues that have spoken here on other things. I think we'd all like to cut these guys in. The carrier model is working. There are revenue sharing things that are working. So I think we can find a way to play nicely together, or I guess I just won't see you at the next Digital Hollywood.
All right, well, as a lawyer and your lawyer, I'll stop you there. I'm not really your lawyer, but I'll stop you. And let's wrap up this panel. We've got 5 minutes left. I want to go back to something else Aaron said, we've all been talking about mobile for the last 10 years. 10 years from now, are we going to be having similar conversations? What's going to really drive, the kind of dream of social networking on the mobile phone in the next couple of years? And I'm just going to go down this line, answer that question, then we'll wrap up the panel.
The PIM is the coming battleground in the mobile space. I would equate this to search on the web. It used to be directory when there was only millions of websites. Then when there were quadrillions, it was search. That's the on-ramp to the web. The on-ramp to the mobile space is your personal information manager, and that's what everyone wants to get their hands on. The carriers want to keep it, the OEMs want to own it, the MySpaces of the world have Trojan horse strategies which obviate the need for any sort of affiliation with a carrier if your friends list is the only place where you can start all of your communications. That is going to happen.
From when in Blue Dot, we kind of have skirted a lot of these issues because I think for us, social networking is really more about, we think that killer app for social networking, at least for certain demographics, is recommendations. And so you have a set of friends, you trust their recommendations, you want to know what they like, and how do you get access to that without redistributing the content, without reformatting the content, and so we kind of get out of the whole distribution, kind of going back to the previous question, get out of the distribution and modification game by being purely a recommendation service. So, in the web space, social bookmarking is really about recommending things to other people, at least the way Blue Dot does it, and so you don't have kind of the legal issues with that. And I think, on the mobile platform, you really just want to have access to the same kind of experience you would have on the web and be able to really get access to that kind of recommendations from your friends. And obviously mobile is a great communication platform wherever you are, but it's missing this piece of I think this killer app of the social network to be able to get access to recommendations for all kinds of content. And if we can drive those people through other distribution mechanisms that are monetized appropriately to the content owners, then they don't have to feel nervous about a service that does something like that.
Okay, Ryan, what are the drivers towards social networking on the phone?
Well, I think basically people are going to start collaborating on media creation. That's already starting to happen. It's always going to be about basically for us enabling artists to basically take advantage of what they've created and show it to an audience and actually have an audience participate in some monetary stream come in. They may eventually become advertising based. It may actually be things other than mobile phones. I mean, one of the reasons we're involved with ringbacks on AOL is because we think that the VoIP world is going to be interesting. That the VoIP devices, a Sony MIMO or whatever it is, a little device that looks really kind of cool. So I'm not going to even predict where devices are going to go because I'm from the video game industry, and that industry has gone all over the place in the last 10 years. So who knows? The main thing is that we're dealing with a generation that's really the playgroup generation. They didn't get a chance to actually ride their bicycles over to their friend's house. They had to make play dates. So they're very into communicating. It's part of the culture, and I don't see it going away. I think the social networks will become stronger. Maybe they'll get location-based stuff. I don't know. I mean, I'm dabbling in location-based stuff as well, only because it could be interesting.
Sure.
So, I'm not going to try to
Well, the one thing I'll say, and just, leave it, is that I think a lot more is going to be app supported on mobile. And we didn't really get a chance to talk about that, but I'll say what really came out of the session for me is that companies like Helio that are making their own devices and kind of creating their own ecology have an opportunity for an iTunes iPod-like experience. Now, it has been brutal in the MVNO industry for a variety of reasons. And by the way, I mean, Virgin is a kind of marketing phenomenon ultimately. Is there really anything unique? I mean, the guy that markets it used to work at the NFL, he worked at MTV. He's a very sharp guy, and he's a great brand builder. There's nothing powerfully unique about Virgin. I think that several years from now, we will either be saying, wow, they really figured out a way to create something, unique and different that was so incredible that it made people leave the core companies. I don't know. Partnering with MySpace is not the answer because, as Sean says, MySpace is not going to execute because they got a zillion other things going on. They don't know how to do it. It's not their competencies, et cetera, et cetera. It's really building a kind of whole vertically integrated value chain, which the good news is, Helio's investors are very, very affluent.
So I guess we can end with Mike Jones, because Michael Grossi already got his pitch there. But Mike, what do you think, Mike Jones? And then Michael Grossi, you can have the last word.
I believe that the mobile phone is really just another lens on top of the experience that you're giving somebody on the web. So if you create something great that has a great user experience or a great utility to the user or a fantastic community, one way that users are experiencing those through their phone, another ways that they're experiencing it through the web, those lenses are customized, maybe they're different. I think if you can do something with a new carrier like Helio and do something very custom, I think that's actually really exciting. And if you can get on deck, that just gives you more of an advantage, the same way it benefits Google to be the default search bar on deck of Safari, right? I think if you can negotiate those business deals, that's fantastic. But at the end of the day, I think it's another lens on the same, on a similar great experience. I think it's just about building great experiences, and people use them on the phone or use them on the browser, however they do it.
Michael, anything there?
I would just say, I think the future is an integrated communication service whereby, whether it's social networking, I want to email somebody who's on my MySpace account, I want to IM somebody who's on my Yahoo account, whether I want to email somebody at work, that is an integrated experience that you can easily self-select from your existing device. And you blur the lines between being a social device as well as an enterprise, right, that you can use. I also think location-based services presents a great opportunity. And you'll see, obviously, Helium making lots of announcements there.
Okay, well, thank you all. You made for an entertaining panel. I hope you all enjoyed it.